In the heart of Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré stood at the window of his modest office, gazing out at the bustling streets of Ouagadougou. The sunlight streamed through the glass, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a serene moment, but underneath the calm exterior lay a tempest of unease. For months, whispers of conspiracy had circulated, growing louder and more insistent. Traoré felt the weight of his position pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. He had dedicated his life to improving the lives of his people, but now it seemed forces were conspiring to undo that work. As he leafed through the intelligence reports scattered across his desk, he couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was brewing just beneath the surface. His advisors had warned him of the potential threat, but they lacked concrete evidence. The reports hinted at suspicious movements within the military and government, but nothing was definitive. The words blurred together as he thought about the implications. What if the very people he had trusted were plotting against him? What if the dream of a stable and prosperous Burkina Faso was slipping away? Suddenly, the door creaked open, interrupting his thoughts. His closest advisor, a seasoned military officer named Colonel Youssef, entered the room with a look of concern etched upon his face. "Mr. President," he began, his voice low and urgent. "The situation is more serious than we thought. We need to consider our options." Traoré held up a hand to silence him, his mind racing. "I know, Youssef. But we cannot act on mere speculation. If we make a move without proof, we risk igniting chaos." His voice was steady, but inside he felt a growing sense of dread. He knew that time was of the essence. The conspirators were likely already plotting their strike. After a long pause, Traoré made a decision that would change everything. "I need to understand what's happening. I need to gather information without raising suspicion." He declared his resolve hardening. The idea that began to form in his mind was reckless, but it was also the only way he could think of to uncover the truth. That night, Ibrahim Traoré donned worn-out clothes, disguising himself as a homeless man. He stepped out into the night, accompanied only by a few trusted agents who would monitor him from a distance. The streets of Ouagadougou were alive with the sounds of laughter and music, but Traoré felt like a ghost slipping through the shadows. He had spent years in positions of power where every move was scrutinized, and now he was about to immerse himself in a world he had only glimpsed from afar. As he walked through the darkened alleys, he felt both fear and exhilaration. He approached a small fire where a group of homeless individuals gathered. They eyed him suspiciously as he sat down, trying to blend in. An elderly man with a grizzled beard looked him up and down. "You're new here," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Yes?" Traoré replied, lowering his gaze. "I recently lost everything." The man nodded knowingly, and Traoré could see the flicker of understanding in his eyes. "Welcome to the Club of the Invisible," he said, offering Traoré a piece of bread. Over the next few days, Traoré listened intently to the conversations around the fire. The stories of hardship and survival poured out, but he also overheard snippets of discussions that hinted at something more sinister. As night fell, he would hear hushed voices speaking in code about upcoming changes and new leaders. The tension in the air was palpable, and Traoré felt a shiver run down his spine when he realized that he was sitting on crucial information. One night, while pretending to sleep, he overheard two men discussing their plans. "Tomorrow night is the right time," one of them said in a low voice. "We need to act quickly before anyone notices." The other man, visibly anxious, questioned the loyalty of their allies. "Are you sure we can trust them?" he asked. "Don't worry," the first man replied, confidence lacing his tone. "We have support within the army and the government." The words struck Traoré like a bolt of lightning. He knew he had to act fast. The next morning, he discreetly followed the first man to a meeting point on the outskirts of the city. From a distance, he watched as the man met with other individuals, including a high-ranking military officer whom Traoré recognized as a loyalist to the previous regime. Returning to the palace, Traoré felt a mix of fear and determination. He had uncovered a dangerous plot, but now he needed to inform his security team without raising suspicion. He managed to slip away briefly to meet his undercover agents who were waiting for him at a nearby cafe. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice low but urgent, "I have discovered something serious. There is a plan to overthrow the government tomorrow night." The agents exchanged worried glances but quickly began devising a plan to neutralize the threat. With the information Traoré had gathered, while disguised as a homeless man, he returned to the presidential palace to coordinate a strategic counteroffensive. The atmosphere was charged with tension, but Traoré was resolute. He would not allow his country to fall into chaos. The stakes were high, and he knew that he had to act with caution to avoid bloodshed while ensuring the stability of the government. He called an emergency meeting with his most trusted allies, including loyal members of the armed forces and community leaders. With a steady voice, he laid out the details of the coup plot he had discovered. "We have an enemy within our own ranks," he said, his words echoing in the silence of the room. "They plan to act tomorrow night, but we will be one step ahead." As the meeting concluded and plans were set into motion, Traoré felt a flicker of hope mixed with the weight of responsibility. He was determined to protect his people, but he also knew that true strength lay not just in military action, but in the ability to inspire unity and resilience among the citizens of Burkina Faso. The chapter closed with Traoré looking out the window at the city beneath him, feeling a sense of purpose that burned brighter than the stars above. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that the future of Burkina Faso depended on the choices he made in the coming hours. As dawn broke over Ouagadougou, the city stirred to life, unaware of the storm brewing within its walls. President Ibrahim Traoré stood in the presidential palace, surrounded by a cadre of advisors and military leaders. The atmosphere was thick with tension. The air crackled with anticipation. Traoré's heart raced as he prepared to share the intelligence he had gathered the previous night during his undercover mission. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, yet imbued with urgency, "we have a serious threat looming. I infiltrated a group of the homeless last night and overheard a plot against our government. They plan to act tonight." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Colonel Youssef, the ever-loyal military advisor, leaned forward, concern etched across his face. "But, Mr. President, we cannot act on mere whispers. We need concrete proof before we mobilize our forces." Traoré nodded, understanding the caution but feeling the urgency pulsing through his veins. "I agree, Youssef, but the longer we wait, the more chance they have to execute their plan. We need to act quickly and discreetly." Traoré's determination was palpable. He knew that these conspirators were not just faceless enemies. They were individuals he had once trusted, men who had sworn allegiance to the nation. With a deep breath, Traoré laid out his plan. "We will set up surveillance around the city and monitor known associates of the conspirators. When the time comes, we will apprehend them before they can act." The advisors nodded, their expressions shifting from skepticism to resolve. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the tension within the palace transformed into a sense of purpose. Traoré knew that to confront this threat, he had to be strategic. The stakes were high. Failure could mean chaos, even bloodshed, yet with every passing hour, he felt the weight of his responsibility. He was not just fighting for his position, but for the future of Burkina Faso. While the military began preparations for the operation, Traoré took a moment to reflect on the people he had met during his time on the streets. Their stories of hardship, their struggles for survival weighed heavily on his heart. He understood that the conspirators were exploiting the very real grievances of the marginalized. This was not just an attack on his government, it was a reflection of the inequalities that plagued society. As night fell, the palace was alive with activity. Traoré's heart raced as he and his team prepared for the operation. He instructed his loyal generals to remain vigilant and to coordinate with local law enforcement. "This is not just about arresting the conspirators," he reminded them. "It's about sending a message that we will not tolerate betrayal, but we must act with justice, not revenge." The streets of Ouagadougou were eerily quiet as Traoré's forces moved out, their footsteps echoing against the cobblestones. The tension was palpable. Traoré's mind raced with thoughts of the homeless individuals he had met. the conversations he had overheard. He couldn't shake the feeling that the conspirators were just the tip of the iceberg. The real challenge lay in addressing the underlying issues that had given rise to such discontent. As they approached the meeting point where the conspirators were rumored to gather, Traoré felt a mix of fear and determination. He knew that confronting the enemy was only the first step. The real battle lay in healing the wounds of society and restoring trust. Suddenly, a commotion erupted ahead. Traoré's heart sank as he heard shouts and the sound of a struggle. "This is it," he thought. "They're making their move." With a swift gesture, he signaled for his team to advance. As they closed in, Traoré caught sight of familiar faces, the very men he had once considered allies. The scarred man he had overheard speaking about the coup plot stood among them, flanked by a group of disheveled men. They were clearly agitated, their voices rising in anger. "Now is the time," the scarred man shouted. "We take control before they can stop us. The people are with us." Traoré's heart raced. He knew he had to act quickly. With a steely resolve, he stepped forward, raising his voice above the chaos. "Stop, right there. This ends, now." The conspirators froze, confusion etched on their faces as they turned to see the president standing tall before them, flanked by his loyal forces. The scarred man's eyes narrowed as he recognized Traoré. You think you can stop us? You're just a puppet." "I am no puppet," Traoré replied firmly. "I am the voice of the people, and I will not let you take control through fear and violence." With a signal from Traoré, his forces moved in to apprehend the conspirators. The chaos erupted into a flurry of activity as the loyal soldiers quickly subdued the men. The scarred man struggled, but Traoré stepped forward, looking him squarely in the eye. "You were once a protector of this nation. What happened to you?" As the conspirators were led away, Traoré felt a mix of triumph and sorrow. He had neutralized the immediate threat, but at what cost? The battle was far from over, and the trust of the people was fragile. Back at the palace, Traoré gathered his advisors for an emergency meeting. "This incident is a wake-up call," he stated, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "We must address the underlying issues that led to this conspiracy. We cannot allow desperation to breed betrayal." As he outlined a series of initiatives aimed at addressing poverty and inequality, Traoré felt a renewed sense of purpose. It was time to heal the wounds of his country and to rebuild trust with the people he knew. That true security lay not just in military strength, but in strong communities, where every citizen felt valued. As the meeting concluded, Traoré looked out at the city, determined to lead with empathy and justice. He understood that the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face it head-on together. "We will rise above this darkness," he vowed to himself. The sun rose over Ouagadougou, casting a golden hue across the city. A stark contrast to the shadows that had loomed just days before President Ibrahim Traoré stood at the window of his office, reflecting on the events of the past week. The coup plot had been thwarted, but the aftermath weighed heavily on his heart. He knew that while he had acted decisively, the underlying issues that had led to such discontent remained unresolved. The news of the foiled coup had spread like wildfire, igniting conversations across the nation. Citizens were relieved, yet they also felt a gnawing uncertainty about the future. Traoré understood that he needed to harness this moment to promote real change, to address the social injustices that had driven some of his fellow citizens to betray their country. As he prepared for a press conference, he glanced at the stack of reports on his desk. Each document told a story of struggle. Families living in poverty, children lacking access to education, communities without basic services. It was time to turn these stories into action. When he stepped onto the podium later that day, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Cameras flashed and reporters from around the world awaited his words. Traoré took a deep breath, his heart steadying as he looked out at the sea of faces, each representing a different story, a different struggle. Citizens of Burkina Faso. He began, his voice firm and clear. What happened here was not just an attack on my government, but a reflection of the inequalities that persist in our society. We must confront these issues head-on, not only to ensure our security, but to build a future where every citizen feels valued and heard. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Today, I am announcing a series of initiatives aimed at addressing poverty, improving education, and promoting social justice. We will create job opportunities for our youth, reform land policies, and invest in health and education in our poorest regions. The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of hope washing over them. For the first time in a long while, people felt that their voices were being acknowledged. Traoré continued, "But this journey cannot be undertaken alone. I need each of you to be part of this movement. Together we can build a stronger, more united Burkina Faso." As he concluded his speech, a young woman in the front row stood up, her voice trembling with emotion. "Mr. President, thank you for believing in us. We will do our part." Her words echoed through the crowd, igniting a fire of determination among the citizens. After the press conference, Traoré decided to visit some of the neighborhoods that had been most affected by poverty. He wanted to hear directly from the people to understand their needs and aspirations. As he walked through the narrow streets, he was met with a mixture of surprise and excitement. People gathered around him, their eyes wide with hope, and he listened as they shared their stories. One elderly woman named Mama Aisha approached him, her hands calloused from years of hard work. "Mr. President," she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion, "we have been forgotten for too long. But your words today give us hope. We just need a chance to thrive." Traoré nodded, deeply moved by her sincerity. "And you will have that chance, Mama Aisha. We will work together to ensure that no one is left behind." As he continued his walk, he was joined by a group of young men and women who had begun organizing community projects to improve their neighborhoods. "We are tired of waiting for someone to come and save us," said a young man named Malik. "We want to build our own solutions, just like you said." Ibrahim felt a surge of pride. "That's the spirit. Your commitment to your community is the foundation of our nation's future." The days turned into weeks, and as Traoré's initiatives began to take shape, he saw a remarkable transformation in the communities he visited. The young people who once felt powerless were now leading projects to beautify their streets, reopen schools, and provide food for those in need. There was a sense of unity and purpose that had been absent for far too long. One afternoon, as he walked through a newly renovated school, Traoré met with a group of children who were excitedly sharing their dreams. "I want to be a doctor," one girl exclaimed. "I want to build bridges," another shouted. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and Traoré felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. However, the journey was not without challenges. As the initiatives rolled out, Traoré faced opposition from those who had benefited from the status quo. Some influential figures within the government and military resisted the changes, fearing a loss of power. But Ibrahim remained steadfast, knowing that true leadership involved standing firm for what was right, even in the face of adversity. During one particularly tense meeting, a general voiced his concerns, questioning the need for reforms. "You're risking our stability, Traoré," he warned. "You're giving too much power to the people." Traoré's gaze was unwavering. "The stability of our country lies in the hands of its citizens. We cannot thrive if we ignore their needs. True security comes from building strong communities, not from silencing dissent." The tension in the room was palpable, but Traoré felt a swell of support from his allies. They understood that change was necessary, and they rallied behind him, determined to push forward. As the months passed, the fruit of their labor began to bear results. Unemployment rates dropped, and local businesses thrived. Children returned to school, and families began to feel a renewed sense of hope. The nation was healing slowly but surely. One evening, as Traoré sat in his office reflecting on the progress they had made, he received a call from Mama Aisha. "Mr. President," she said, her voice filled with warmth, "thank you for believing in us. We are finally starting to see a better future for our children." Traoré smiled, knowing that their journey was just beginning. Together, We will continue to build a Burkina Faso that we can all be proud of. This is just the start. As he hung up the phone, Ibrahim felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He understood that leadership was not just about making decisions, it was about inspiring others to believe in themselves and in their ability to create change. The chapter closed with Traoré looking out at the city, filled with a sense of determination and hope. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face it. He was not just a leader, he was a partner in the journey toward a brighter future for Burkina Faso. Thank you for following Ibrahim Traoré's inspiring journey. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to discover more incredible stories from StoryMoss.